Hey, welcome. I want to show you, this is a follow-up on a video I did recently about bits, and I kind of jokingly named that video "Bits Are Cruel Too," and they're not if you use them properly. They can be. So what I want to do is to show you the proper way to use a snaffle bit, or at least an acceptable way, and there are variations depending on what discipline you're riding with. But some of the basics are the same, and let me tell you the key. Again, the key is slow hands. As long as you are slow with your hands, then you're not going to hurt your horse, okay? English riders typically ride with their reins a little bit tighter, and I mean just a little bit, than do Western riders. However, if an English rider is a good rider, then even though that rein is short, they're not putting a lot of pressure on that horse's mouth. So you watch an English rider riding around and their hands are out here. If they're a good rider, they might be clear out here and it might look like they're tight, but you see those reins aren't actually tight. He just turned his head because they're not tight. And so in the Western disciplines, we tend to ride them just a little bit looser, but not that much. And I teach my students, when you're riding in a snaffle bit, hold your hands like you're holding 2 ice cream cones. That's how you want to hold your reins. And I like to have all 5 fingers around the reins. English, they'll put the rein between their 4th and 5th finger like that, because they don't move their hands up and down the reins as much in the English discipline. In the Western disciplines, we tend to, or at least I do, I'll walk my hands up and down these reins quite a bit, and I also use my pinkies for signaling the horse, okay? So if I'm gonna get my reins set, this is how you set your reins. Hold your arm straight out as far as you can reach it. And if that bit is, if I'm just barely putting pressure on his bit, then I'm gonna probably loosen it just a little bit, and that's where I want it to be, okay? So when my arms are straight out, I'm not putting any pressure on this horse's mouth, but it only takes a slightest move of my hand like that, and I put pressure on his mouth, okay? So I bend my elbow to turn my horse. And proper riding form is you do not lean. Now, when I'm training a colt, and I mentioned the other day about my filly that has 7 rides, she's tied up there behind me. When I first ride, first couple rides on a colt, I'm gonna reach out like that so they can see my hand, so they can kind of follow that. But once that horse understands the basic ideas, you don't lean to turn your horse. All you do is bend your elbow, and that horse, you can see how my horse turned his nose with just the slightest little bit of touch. That was about 2 ounces of pressure, and he gave to that because this horse is well trained and he understands he needs to give to that. And so that's how you ride your horse at all gaits, okay? If I'm riding at a trot, and it's really wet, so I'm not going to go very fast out here. We had about 3 inches of rain last night. If I'm riding at a trot, my hands don't really move. I'm posting, but my hands stay in the same place they would if I were at a walk. If I were loping, they'd be in the same place when you're riding with the snaffle bit. Now, if you're trail riding and you're bebopping through the woods, then you can do this. You know, put your hand on the saddle horn and then just reach up and turn your horse like that and ride them pretty loose. What you don't want to do is let them hang way down there like that. That's not safe for any reason, okay? You can have a loose rein without it hanging way down. So that's the proper way to use a snaffle bit. Remember that it's a side pull. It's a side-to-side bit. It's designed to be pulled like this, okay? Now, can you pull on 2 reins? You can, but keep in mind that little steepling effect that I showed you the other day, or sometimes called the nutcracker effect. So if I'm pulling on 2 reins, I need to keep in mind that my horse, depending on, especially if I get any resistance, now there I won't, because he's not resisting. So I'm going to back him up with the slightest little bit of pressure there. So that bit's not steepling in his mouth or nutcrackering on him because he's not putting any pressure on it. If he were to put real pressure and push into it, and then I were to pull back, then it could do that. And especially the closer your hands are together, okay? Think about the snaffle bit having the break in the middle if it's that type of bit. The closer your hands are together, the more of that you're going to get. If your hands are wider apart, okay, then it's not going to do that as much. All right, so that's the proper way to use a snaffle bit, to ride two-handed with your hands held like a snow cone, like you're holding two snow cones in your hand, and then you just bend your elbow to turn your horse. And one of the reasons we do that is because we want to keep that horse's shoulder up. If I'm going to turn my horse and I lean over like this and do that and pull down, then what I've just done is I've put pressure on his shoulder, and when he steps, it's going to be real clunky, okay? Because all my weight was leaning on that shoulder. However, if I lift up and make this turn like this, see his weight's on his hind end, and so by pulling up, I lift his shoulder and get it out of his way, all right? And that's in any discipline, whether it's English or Western. So that's the proper way to use a snaffle bit. One of the things I like about them is you can bend your horse to a stop. You can one rein stop your horse if you have to. If you have a problem, you can bend your horse like that. You can slow your horse down with a snaffle bit. If this horse speeds up and I don't want him to, I'll just gently bend him till he slows back down and then let go. Proper way to use a snaffle bit. So stay tuned for the next video. I'm going to show you about shank bits and how to ride in a shank bit.